Hello everyone, welcome to another build order tutorial, and we're once again going to be looking at a Terran versus Protoss build order shown to us by INnoVation, the macro god that he is. This is going to be a 3cc macro build that still packs quite a punch around the 7-minute mark, so let's dive right in. Supply depot. Barracks. Refinery. Fill that refinery up. Send an SCV to Scout. Grab your Orbital and a Reaper. Get your Natural Command Center. Supply depot. And Reactor. You should see a nexus forming at the Protoss base, otherwise things are going weird. Get a Refinery. The factory. You could choose to get a bunker at this time, or not. Should be starting your marine production consistently. Get the Orbital at the Natural Command Center. Add a tech lab to the factory and start your starport. Get a Cyclone. Tech lab on the starport when it finishes. Remember not to get supply blocked. Start up a tank after the Cyclone's done. Remember to guard your mineral lines, especially if you have not been able to scout their tech. Get a Raven when the starport is ready. Add on that third CC. Swap the factory off the tech lab and put the barracks on the free tech lab. Then build 2 barracks, one of them on the open reactor. Continue producing Marines and start up Stim. With the Raven done, swap the starport off the tech lab, grab 2 refineries in that natural. Start up 2 engineering bays. Get a reactor on the factory, as well as the starport. Swap the finished 3rd barracks onto the open tech lab. Start your 1-1 and combat shields on the 2nd tech lab. Get your 3rd command center's orbital. Grab 2 more barracks. Start up Widowmine production and Marauder production with the barracks. Now would be a decent time to scan to try and see what their army composition is, since you don't do much scouting otherwise. If you feel safe enough, put that 3rd CC on location. Start your Medivac production as well around this point. Get 1 reactor and 1 tech lab on the finished additional barracks. And now we should be at 7 minutes, and you should be moving out. Grab the armory behind this push and just continue macroing up. Your 3rd CC will eventually get saturated, and you will eventually add on more barracks, 2nd starport, all that good stuff. Now on to the build discussion. The strengths of this build include it being a very good macro build. It is somewhat safe. If you get a bunker, grab a tank, safeguard yourself against oracles or blink attacks into the main base with an observer. You can defend against many things that a Protoss would do, but note that INnoVation was probably willing to do this build with very little scouting, very little harassment, because he was facing a Protoss that is very well known for his macro, that is stats. So just keep in mind that if you are facing a 2-base all-in, you're going to need to have more fortification, perhaps more bunkers, perhaps a supply depot wall, that type of stuff. Still hits a 7-minute attack, so even though you don't have a lot going on beforehand, if you can compare this to the 2-base build from however many weeks ago, I suppose, then you'll see that they actually attack around the same time, but the 2-base one's going to have a bit more of a punch. This still has the ability to try and control the map, which is nice. Gets macro set up prior to focusing on the attack, so instead of having to grab your 3rd CC and then also remember to plant it on location and then remember to start building your SCVs and the 2 extra barracks and the armory, all that stuff kind of happens in a lot of other builds as you're out in the map trying to do something, where this one you just have it all done, and then sure, you still need to macro, get the additional barracks, get the starport, but you have a lot of it already set up before you have to focus somewhere else. It's got great upgrade timings. So, you know, we all know that Protoss sometimes can jump ahead in those upgrades, even after the upgrade nerf that they received. But with this one, you actually are going to have a fairly good time, even, well, especially against someone who's only going for a single forge or more Colossus build. Your upgrade's going to be quite good. It's flexible to go into 2nd starport, Ghost Academy, depending on this scout slash push out. Remember, whenever you are out in the map, you're not just looking to do damage, you're also trying to look to scout, so be smart about it. But yeah, if you see them going for a lot of charge lots and high Templars, maybe a Ghost Academy is better than that 2nd starport. But actually, with such a powerful economy, we do see a lot of pros add on basically both at the same time, Ghost Academy and 2nd starport, perhaps even a Fusion Core if you wanted to go to Liberator path, but definitely keep in mind what you're scouting. Weaknesses of this build: no tanks, or very few, just the one. For easy defense against stalkers, or to really press pause at a Protoss who's trying to all-in you. You know, if you got 4 tanks and a supply depot wall, even with a mass charge on attack, they're gonna rethink, right? But this is not such an easy defense. You can't have a second tank on that high ground. I mean, do keep in mind you can be flexible with these builds. These builds are mostly just give you guys benchmarks than they are to be like, you always have to do this. So, yeah, if you find yourself being a little susceptible to those blink high ground attacks, even with the Raven trying to kind of defend against that, maybe you do get a second tank. Maybe you skip the Cyclone entirely. But that would change up the build a little bit. The point is, there's going to be weaknesses. It's a 3cc build. They're supposed to be. It's got no harassment. You're not on the map at all. It's just the SCV Scout and the Reaper Scout, and then maybe you send out a couple of Marines to get some preemptive scouting if they're going to attack you, but otherwise not much. No pushing power before Stim. Combat shields are slow, so yeah, this is not something that you would usually be like, okay, now that I got, you know, Stim, let's just YOLO into the Protoss army. In fact, the timing with the Medivacs actually works out with Stim finishing, so you are waiting on an actual attack where if the Protoss is, you know, tries their best to get the scouting done, they'll say, oh, Medivacs? Okay, you're going to attack me, and that's the time I'm waiting for. Anything before that would be a very odd attack indeed, and probably would fail even if it was a big surprise. No scouting past the Reaper. Same thing with the harassment, right? Harassment is often scouting, and vice versa, but it's just, yeah, no scouting, no harassment, just that one scan. You will feel in the dark, and if you're not comfortable with that, then there are things you can do. You can scan more often, you can send all those Marines. You can even maybe, like, try and harass with the Raven. That's very dangerous, but you can try some of these things just to get an idea of what your Protoss opponent is doing, but it's going to be a little difficult. It's not going to be a huge tug of war where you can adapt quicker than they can adapt. Like, no, you're just doing your thing and pushing and hoping you're not running into a 50 charge lots. Tips and tricks. Send Marines forward to scout. This is always a great tip. It's going to be in like every single Terran build order. One in front of the wall. If you do build a wall, you don't have to, but you know, go ahead. One at each attack path, and one on each potential third of your opponent to see that timing. If you see a third, it does, even if it's like a third that doesn't have a lot of probes being chroned out for it, it still gives you a better idea as to the lateness of an attack. It's possible it's just a complete fake, but not likely. So these will really help you out, because even that little like 5-second, 2-second difference even of pulling the SCVs against a big all-in is huge. Hockey the Raven independently. Another just general tip. It's really good. You gotta get used to not having that in your main army, not just because you don't want it floating ahead or even floating behind necessarily, but also because you have to tab over to Stim, which is another action that you might not be familiar with and can mess you up even more than losing the Raven in a kind of stupid way, because you have it on single hockey and you run it forward. I do that all the time, but I prefer that over miss-stimming, which I also do if I accidentally hockey the Raven. It takes priority. SCV Scout should reveal aggression oddities in that early game, that is. Again, if there's no Nexus, that's already like, okay, that's something weird. If there's something else going on that looks kind of weird, you know, maybe it was time to explore first, but there is a Nexus on the way, which your SCV Scout should be able to see. You might just want to go ahead and do the safe path, even if it is just a little bit of a poke. Go ahead and put that CC on the high ground until you're really up there in Masters, I would even say. Maybe even higher. Like, these tiny things aren't such a big deal, but they will make you feel so much more confident in your build and allow you to pay attention to your build, which is where most of us screw up. You know, we see something, we have something done to us, and then the whole build just, it's not even there anymore. But if you're a little more turtly, then the effects on the actual push or the actual macro is going to be not as important as, well, getting a CC on the low ground and having a cancel due to a Zealot and a Stalker, and then you start panicking and everything goes to shit, basically. It's better. So, if you're not confident, just go for that CC on the high ground. Go for the bunker. Next tip, grab a bunker in the early game to help defend against harassment like Stalker pokes, especially on maps with no ramps at their natural, like Thunderbird, which we just saw. You can try to abuse the ramp that is a little bit farther, right? So a lot of maps have a ramp that's, kind of farther away from the natural, but not on the natural. You can put Marines on the high ground, but even that sometimes isn't quite enough. So the bunker is just, it's safer. Use Raven and Bioball to scout for blink harassment observers while waiting for upgrades. So you saw INnoVation doing that with his Cyclone, actually. Cyclone and a Raven combination, very powerful. That doesn't necessarily mean that they just have to stop doing that blink harassment, because they could always hallucinate a Phoenix or just need that 1 second. The observer does get the high ground vision, but it does tend to make them stall out on the push. At the very least, even if they weren't going to do that push, you find yourself an observer, and now it's the Protoss's turn to feel a little uncomfortable about what you are doing. And that just about does it. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope this helps your TvP, and I will see you guys next time for another build order tutorial.